Well, good evening. We're so glad you're here tonight. It's a thrill for us to be on the stage tonight because it keeps snowing and taking our rehearsal time away, and so we've had a growing experience in the last 9 hours. Instead of 20 hours of rehearsal for a normal concert, we've had about 9.5, I think, about maybe 10. So we kind of had this idea about kind of going back to our roots. Well, actually going back to my roots is what it really amounts to. We're playing a lot of music that I played as a wee lad. Well, maybe not a wee lad. Well, I've always been a wee lad, I guess. But we want to pay homage to some of those composers that really kind of started what we all do today, kind of thing. The Frank Ericksons, the Claude Smiths, the Howard Hansons, etc., that really kind of gave us the first music for real band that we know today. Now, prior to, say, 1950, I mean, of course, John Philip Sousa, because we always do Sousa here, and all the early bands that up through the 1930s mostly played transcriptions and marches. And then in the 40s, the 50s, you start getting this spattering of people who actually want to write for a band. Paul Yoder's, I'm trying to think of some of the gentlemen I met when I was really young and that passed away. But I mean, these names that kind of kept cropping up, like Frank Erickson, the composer that's going to be shown next on Toccata for Band. When I was in junior high, I remember meeting Frank Erickson because he lived in Kansas City and was introduced to him. And wow, a real live composer kind of thing who wrote for band, and that was kind of exciting. And so over the years, since really the beginning of 1950, in 1952, Frederick Fennell at the Eastman Wind Ensemble, or the Eastman School of Music, wanted to start a wind ensemble, a small wind band that really, and he wanted to have really legitimate music for a wind band, and he wrote to 400 composers around the world who wrote for orchestra, and he asked them, would some of you like to write music for a wind band? And 11 of them responded. It was kind of a slow start, but that's kind of where we all started. It was in 1952 with the Eastman Wind Ensemble, and now the band is kind of America's ensemble. All the new music, a lot of new music be written for it, and so it's an exciting venture to be a part of, and we're still really in the infancy of that particular ensemble. But tonight we're going to pay homage to a number of these gentlemen that have come before us. I would like to note in the program that there is a little problem. I think I pushed the first page down a little bit because I lost the last number. If you'll notice your program notes, go all the way to a piece called Chorale and Alleluia, but your front page doesn't. But we're going to go to Chorale and Alleluia. So there is one more. So if you're breathing a sigh of relief when you see Country Gardens, I'm sorry, there's still one more to go. Well, I'd like you to welcome to our stage one of our undergrad conductors, Miss Maria Shepard, and she's going to bring us with her baton, Toccata for Band, Frank Erickson. conductors. Tonight we have Maria, undergrad. We're going to have Heather Hall, a graduate student. But I want you to understand that when we say, well, this is a guest conductor, they worked up the pieces. They corrected the band. They found the mistakes. They asked for all the changes. I mean, I had no hand in it. Well, I had a little hand in it, but they have to do most of the work. And so, conducting is not really mimicking Dr. Holsinger. It's deciding what you want to do with each of the pieces. And each of these young ladies tonight had a definite idea about what they wanted to do with the pieces. But on the conducting level like that, these pieces are very well. In fact, the pieces we're playing tonight, well, the nice things about them is that all these students are going out to teach. All these pieces are still played today a great deal and would make viable pieces for any high school band, especially when you're starting a younger band or a medium-sized school or even a large school kind of thing. They're very viable pieces. So it's kind of a neat thing to get a chance for us to kind of put these in our toolbox back behind us, and later on when these guys go out to do the real thing, they've got something to hang on to. We're going to continue with a piece by Francis Macbeth. Francis Macbeth passed away last year, and if you were here last year, we did his, they hung their harps on the willows, one of his most poignant pieces. But when Francis was starting, he's very much a product of Clifton Williams and I can't think of his other teacher. Oh, Bernard Rogers Tran, and if you are keen on Clifton Williams, you'll hear a little Clifton Williams in this is kind of an opening first piece of Max. In fact, later on when you hear a piece that I wrote when I was 19 years old, you're going to discover, and if you're a kind of aficionado of band music, that I copied from some of my favorite composers too, because that's kind of what we do when we start out. Things that work, you make them work again. This is a neat piece, Chant Jubilo. It's very much the 1950s, what we kind of are describing up here as movie Bible music. You'll understand this when you hear it. So. Y'all want to go out and rent Ben-Hur now, don't you? I was going to say anybody, we have some changes back here. Well, as you all know, the one guy we never leave out of our concerts is John Philip Sousa. He's a rock star around 1900, and he toured the world 4 times with the Sousa band. But he had to get a start somewhere, and tonight we're going to treat you with two very interesting marches. Very early, 1885, the Sound Off, and in 1886 for encore, the Gladiator. They are different marches than what you hear. We play usually late Sousa, very intricate marches, and these are very dance tunable type of marches. They're very light. They're in the light classic tradition of 1885, and they are delightful. In fact, I didn't know either one of these. My wife actually heard these, and she said, we need to do Sound Off. And I said, okay. And I made sure it was still in print. But it's delightful. I guess these marches are charming. If marches can be charming, these are probably charming marches tonight. But this is Sousa's Sound Off. she conducts the kids' piece. first person I showed that piece to was Claude T. Smith, because when I was a senior in high school, Claude T. Smith was a band director in North Missouri, and he'd come up with his very first piece, Emperata, and Emperata seemed to sweep the nation. I mean, it was one of those pieces that, well, in fact, it like a number of pieces, it's set in a number of different publishers' vaults because everybody was a little afraid of it because it was a little different than anything else, and finally, Winger Jones Music Company in Kansas City took a hold of Emperata, and it was kind of like the start of a great, the great star was born. You know, most of the pieces, like I wrote Prelude and Rondo in college in '66, but it wasn't until a number of years later that it actually got published because most publishers said that the notes were too fast, and there was not any band in the world who could play that. And so, and so Barnhouse Company, I had a friend of mine who called me and said, well, you know that piece you wrote in college, could I do that with the Nebraska All-State Band? I said, well, gosh, sure, and so I gave him the music, and C.L. Barnhouse Company heard it at that point and literally picked it up off the stands and published it. And I was later talking to the head Chuck Barnhouse, the president of Barnhouse, and I said, well, appreciate you doing it. It was kind of a neat kind of thing. I said something about, well, Winger Jones had that in their safe for like 5 years and decided no one could play it, and Chuck said, well, it was a mistake. He said, of course, he turned down Emperata not once, but twice. So, so Claude T. Smith, though, marvelous man, marvelous composer, marvelous Christian fellow, and I tell you, the music is played, we have played a number of his pieces over the years, kind of thing, and if you go to the Smithsonian, if you go into the Air and Space Museum, the music you'll hear on the speakers is a piece called Flight, written by Claude T. Smith, kind of thing. So we're going to play his very first number. The interesting thing about this very first number is it's probably the first piece that I can think of in the kind of the modern band era after the 50s that used some asymmetrical measures instead of everything 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1, 2, 3. He came in with the 7/8 bar. It became kind of where he kind of left out half a beat, and everybody kind of following for years and years. Everybody would call Claude, well, he's Mr. 7/8. But the deal is, he opened a door for a lot of us who just have gone crazy since then and love asymmetrical rhythms. This is Emperata Overture. It had another title when it was written, and I used to remember what it was, but actually Claude had named it, I think, after his wife, and the publisher thought it needed to be something more. So it became Emperata Overture. Claude T. Smith. Well, I know I was joking with some of you coming in. I said, well, tonight you're actually not going to hear any weird notes. We're all playing nice tonal music, except I forgot about one little thing, the Country Gardens. You know, it's a funny song about, if you've read in your program notes, Percy Grainger, we've done a lot of Grainger, and Grainger was really a weird character. Wrote wonderful music way ahead of his time, but he was odd and did strange things. And so there's a little thing about this particular piece. Now, you notice he wrote in there, and I copied out one of the things that he had said, that most English country gardens really weren't full of flowers. It wasn't an English flower. They were mostly turnips. Well, this piece kind of features at least one turnip. Now, here's the thing. There's some conjecture inside this piece. Now, does it happen twice or is it once? Twice. It happens twice. No one really knows whether Grainger wrote this wrong note on purpose or if he just wrote a wrong note. And so directors and conductors for years and years have decided, so half the people go ahead and play the wrong note, or what we think is wrong, and some people go ahead and correct it so it's a pretty note. We decided to keep it as the wrong note because I think it's kind of a little funny thing, because in the middle of all this wonderfully lyrical piece, it just kind of plays around, really it's playful, and all of a sudden there's this little, I hate to use the word honk, but it is in the saxophones, isn't it? Yeah, so, I don't... But it's strange that Jay has this wonderful little saxophone solo about, just a moment, or maybe a half a second or half a moment really into the piece. And all of a sudden there's this, it's on purpose. I want you to know that. But but it really has been conjecture for years and years whether or not Grainger wrote a wrong note or if he really intended to that. We've done a lot of Grainger, and I really wouldn't be surprised if he intended that wrong a note. Please welcome Heather Hall, who's going to conduct Percy Grainger's Country Gardens. As a young college player, I think one of the pieces I remember the most was probably Chorale and Alleluia. I had, as my college band directors, probably two of the most passionate people I ever knew in my entire life. And we played passionate music because that was just kind of the name of the game. You know, we go out, we talk about conducting up here with my conducting students. We always talk about, well, yes, all this stuff is here, but the deal is you have to have a belief system. You have to have something in your heart to say, this is what I want to hear, and this is what music is supposed to be about. And I was taught by people like that. And I remember this particular piece was probably the first piece that I ever wept in. I remember playing this and just tears rolling down my cheeks. It's a wonderful piece. It's one of those pieces that when Fennell asked these 400 people, one of the people who responded was Howard Hanson, who happened to be, of course, he couldn't help it. He was kind of the chairman of the Eastman Eastman School at the time, but he hadn't really dwelt into the wind-lit thing yet. And there are some strange things in the piece, the way it's scored. He scored it for 6 trumpets. And basically in the modern band, 3 trumpets, and he thought, I think in some cases we have 3 parts where we should have had 2 part and 4 part where it should have been 3 part, because he wasn't quite sure how to score for the band, because really in 1955, we're still deciding what the band is really going to be. But it's a marvelous, marvelous piece, and one that it stretches the ensemble. Even though it is an older piece from 1955, it's, as all orchestra composers do, he writes the piece in sharp keys. Band instruments are not made in sharp keys, so the intonation, there's lots of things for these kids to really worry about as they play this, and then get beyond that and bring the red part out. And that's the part we all yearn for. Chorale and Alleluia, Howard Hanson. Because whether you want it or not, another Sousa.